Good morning, Amanda.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yes, I'm so excited that you agreed to be on our podcast and to talk about this idea of how do we actually, how do we actually give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves and wade through all of the guilt and the identifying with one particular parenting style and just like all of the things. And for listeners, if you like just need to kind of identify with where we are at in parenting, I have an 8 and a 4-year-old, and so I'm out of the baby years, and so the things that Amanda and I might be talking about today might not be totally applicable if you're still in the baby years, because I can tell you that if I would have stumbled upon a podcast like this in my first maybe 3 years of parenting, I would have been like, I ain't got space for that. Though, if you are in a great space and you feel like you still want to listen for all of the permission giving and all of the antics and the anecdotes that we might get into today, of course, you are welcome to hang around. So, Amanda, let's give the listeners a bit of context for where you're at in parenting.
Sure. So I'm similar to you. I have a 7 and a 5-year-old. So I agree with what you're saying. Like, if I would have heard somebody say the things I'm going to say today 5 years ago, I would have punched her. Because I
Absolutely.
would have been like, it's not possible.
It would have been like,
Um,
fuck you.
Yeah, like your
Don't
life
know
is
me.
so perfect and mine is so hard and horrible. And that's not to like downplay anyone with younger kids because it is fucking hard. It's so hard. And I think there's also like a space to say like each of us like have strengths and weaknesses in parenting. And like I just didn't like newborns and toddlers. They were not fun. They
Yeah.
were bossy. They didn't sleep. I'm really good at this stage of parenting because like I'm good with feelings and conversations and like I mean, you know what I mean? Like it gets hard, just like different. It's
It's
just different
different.
hard. I'm better at this hard than I was
Yes.
that hard.
Yes.
And that's okay. So
Yeah.
I'm very similar to you. So we're in a stage where, both my kids are a little bit independent. They can feed themselves. They go to the bathroom on their own. They want privacy when they get changed. Like, I give them their clothes in the morning and they get themselves dressed and brush their teeth and go to the bathroom on their own. And they still need me, but
Mhm.
it just looks different. That's all.
Yeah.
No
Absolutely.
one is like gonna die if I leave them downstairs for an hour?
Hour. Yes. Yeah.
More than an hour is questionable, but
I know that coming out of like my son, my youngest will be 5. And so I've been really feeling that the closing, kind of the toddler years. I've just been feeling this space
Mhm.
in my life around him turning 5. how how long how long I struggled to give myself permission to also be a human in the title and the world of parenting. Did you find that too?
Very much so. And it wasn't until I don't remember if it was like my therapist. I truly can't remember if it was like my therapist or someone I've had on my own podcast because I've had a lot of therapists on the podcast too.
Yes.
Let's just go. It was with a therapist who said something to me like, our kids are humans too, right? Like they're allowed to have bad days, they're allowed to wake up miserable, they're allowed to just like not want to function in society that day or whatever, right? Which is so true. But I remember when I heard that, that was like a really big aha moment for me because I think I had this expectation that my kids will like, be a particular way. And we
Mm,
can kind of forget that they're also human. Yes, okay, they don't have the responsibilities that we do. So we think like, what do you have to be worried about? Or what do you have to be tired about? But they're humans. And so when I gave my children permission to be human, it kind of also was like, well, then I am allowed to be
mhm.
human. Like, it's okay if I screw up and yell at you today. I am a human and you are frustrating as hell. So like, it's okay if I'm gonna screw up and yell at you. Like I do the whole like I apologize, I take accountability, and we have a conversation about it. But like I can do those things because I am also a human being. I'm allowed to have a bad day or have a more tired day or have a day where I let my kids sit in front of a screen all day because I'm just toast. Like I'm a human being too, but it wasn't until then. And so I started this podcast in 2020. So I'm going to say it was like 2021. So, I mean, I was parenting for many years in the whole I am not allowed to take a break mentality.
How do you actually do that? Like, can you break that down for somebody who maybe is like, I actually don't know how I can possibly?
I would say, first and foremost, you have to work through your shit, right? Because I think, like, so I'm just going to use myself as an example. I have a spouse who, if I said, so tomorrow I'm gonna fly to the moon and I'll be back in 3 years, he'd be like, cool, I got this. Like
Right,
he's down to support me however I need. I have parents who would also be like, great, we got the kids, no problem.
right.
And I have this incredible support system. I am very lucky. I have a very big, wide support system. And I still didn't ask for help. I still didn't acknowledge those things. So I think first and foremost, you have to give yourself permission, whatever that looks like. And hopefully you're not like me, where I had to be in like a very deep, dark depression to realize how buried I was by myself, truly.
Yes.
And then once I started to ask for help, it was uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
now it's so easy. But you have to actually like take steps towards it. If you're like me and you have this supportive spouse or this supportive system around you, ask your people, hey, can you watch the kids for me? And just be honest, like, I just need a break. I just want to go to the store by myself, or I'm just gonna go away with my spouse for the night. Like, we really need this.
Yeah,
Chances are they get it. Trust me, they get it.
I get it. Yeah.
And it wasn't until I like started actually saying like I just need a break. Like, can you watch my kids for the day? I'm going to go and take a day for me. Or I would tell my husband, I'm going to book the day off work and I need you to pick the kids up from school and deal with dinner and I'm just going to go. Like I don't have a plan, but I'm just going to go do something for me, whatever that looked like. And once I started to do those things and I started to notice, like, I didn't die when I asked somebody for help,
Yes.
and they weren't like, oh my God, you're the world's worst mother. You don't want to spend time with your children. Then that just became a little bit easier. So now I'm very quick to just ask for help. Like, hey, you know what? I have a doctor's appointment. Really need your help. I need someone to pick the kids up from aftercare or school or whatever it looks like. And it's just like it just kind of rolls right out of my mouth now. It's so much easier, but like the biggest hurdle was giving myself permission to be that bad mother, I'm quoting,
Oh,
who
yes.
needed someone else to watch her kids because it was like, God forbid you do it yourself.
Oh, so true. And I'm in this like intricate, it's not that intricate, but we just moved. And so the help, the people who I was used to asking for help are different here. I
Mhm.
left those people.
Oh, so you have to relearn.
So we have to relearn. I'm having to relearn
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
to do
Hard.
this.
That'd be really hard. Yeah.
And it's new people. They're not new people to me. It's just a new set of people. So the other day we were at a family member's house and I was just kind of like, oh man, my husband got a new job and he wasn't working. So I scheduled all these meetings and I don't really know how to like navigate and should I cancel and blah, blah, blah. And she just like put her hand on my knee and was like, just bring the kids over here. It was just so simple. Like no judgment, no like, well, yeah, you should take all those days off work. And yeah, it wasn't anything like I imagined it was going to be, right? I have created that story that I'm going to be judged or I'm going to be viewed or labeled in a certain way. And it was just like, no, you're just going to bring the kids over here, right? Like you're not going to make this complicated. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Mhm. I know, and then but then you can still hear, like, I
I
know
can
the
still
story.
hear
You
it.
can hear the hesitation of like, Is that cool? And so you have to also realize like people wouldn't offer if they don't want to. If they don't want to, they won't.
Like legitimately, they will
And
not
that
say
is
anything.
so true.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also then I used to think to myself, like, am I putting a burden on them? Well, you know what? If I ask you, hey, can you help me out with my kids? And you say yes and you don't want to, that's not my shit to carry. That's yours. Like,
Right?
right. So sometimes you can get in your head like, but I don't really know that they want to. Well, if they do, they will. If they don't want to, they won't. And that's it.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean anything about you. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good one. I remember finally like kind of coming to that aha moment and I'm like, God, this is so simple, but like we complicate it so much and make it seem like we are the worst mom in the world because I want to go for my goddamn pap smear alone. Like,
Right? Like, what a
I'm
thing
sorry.
to want to do by yourself. Like,
Right? God forbid. Like, I don't want my kid, they've already been there once. They don't need to come back. Like,
yes.
leave us alone.
Yeah.
But that's been like the biggest thing for me. Like, truly, like, think about it, simplify it, what you're asking. You're not asking them to like watch your kid for 3 months and feed them and clothe them for the rest of their lives. Like, you're asking them to help you out for an afternoon or a day or a weekend or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it was a week, even if it was a week
Yeah.
to go to Mexico or on a business trip or just
Yeah.
to freaking stay home by yourself for 4 or 5 nights. Like, again, the people who you ask, if they say yes, and you in your deepest heart feel like they are a safe and trustworthy person and they are saying yes, that they're saying yes, like take it at face value.
Yeah. And for me too, I had this big moment for a long time. So when my kids were younger, I used to be alone with my kids every weekend because my husband and I worked opposite shifts. So I would work Monday to Friday and he worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then Fridays for the longest time, because I work in the hospital system. So like back to back mat leaves, I accumulated a whole bunch of vacation time. And I had all this vacation time. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna take the Fridays off because my kids were in daycare. And I thought I struggled with it. I didn't tell anybody I did it for a really long time because I was like, I am purposely using a bunch of my vacation time to take a day off that my kids are not home. They're actively in daycare. And then I had this like time to kind of realize what a better mom I was on the weekends because I was alone with them. So it was a lot, especially during the pandemic. They were so little. And so I realized like what a present mother I was, what a more patient mother I was, and just how happier I was that I was having these Fridays to lay on the couch all day or go. I did a lot of Indigo trips back in the day. I did love going to Indigo by myself in
Yes.
Starbucks.
It is like the place. Like,
Oh,
it doesn't
it's my
matter where I
favorite.
am or like what group of moms I'm talking to. It is like winners or chapters indigo is like where
Yes.
we all want to go.
Yeah, and there's like coffee involved, right? So it's like
Oh,
it's
yes.
never a bad idea. But so I just remembered that, like, wow, like what a difference it made in me that I had this time to refuel or go visit friends or nap, like whatever it looked like. So then that also helped me give permission because I also had this realization of like, wow, I'm like a better mom when I can actually pour into myself. That is actually true. That saying is true that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and I poured from an empty one for way too long.
I resonate with the solo parenting. So my husband works in oil and gas and gone for 7 days, home for 7 days. And so like not home in the evenings at all, lives at camp. And so the solo parenting that I do, if I don't ask for help, I do it all by myself. And the narrative of that is damaging, not only to me, but to our relationship, because I'll say things like, I'm doing this by myself, or when you're not here, I'm doing it by myself. And while that's not untrue, right? Like it's not true. It's this deep rooted gendered conditioning around what a good mother does. And I come from an environment where my mom was a single parent. I was an only child. And so I actually witnessed what single parenting actually is. And she built an amazing village for herself. I was at grandparents. I was, you can go to uncles today and go to the older cousins' volleyball games. You can have a sleepover here or prearrange something over here. And it was like, I witnessed all of that. And yet I still struggle with it. Like I knew what that takes now as an adult, now as a parent. Like I actually understand what that would have taken to organize all of that as a single parent. And I still struggle with it. And so it's interesting that even though you can witness something in your own childhood as something as positive as that, and not be able to apply it to your own self when you get to be a mother, which just speaks volumes to this new pressure that we're all navigating. Like me and you, we weren't going to Instagram when our oldest was a baby, right? Like there wasn't parenting information on Instagram. Therapists were not on Instagram. It was not what it is today. And explaining that to new parents, they can't comprehend it, because they're like, there was a time when this didn't exist. And it was like, yes, there was a time when this didn't exist. And it wasn't that long ago.
No, you're right. It really wasn't. I can remember like grasping at straws trying to get information when like my son was really little. Like it was more like Googling
Yes.
or like a Facebook mom group.
Yeah. Or like
Uh,
Pinterest. Like Pinterest was full of
yeah, yeah, that's true
like
too.
mommy bloggers.
Yeah, it seems like the messaging about, being that perfect mom, and I don't know if it's like the messaging or if something is louder,
Yes.
whatever that something is, if it's just people's influence on social media, if it's society, which is interesting because there's also like a huge push for like, me and you, right?
Yeah.
We don't fuck around with that. Like I'm not a martyr. I never will be, but I struggled thinking I was supposed to be one for a very,
Supposed to
very
be
long
one.
time. Yeah, I think there is like an expectation when we go into motherhood that we think we're supposed to be like the June Cleaver mom. I think like a lot of us go in with that expectation or with that hope that we will be. And then, I mean, and some of us are, some of us can be that person. And I think if you are that person, like that's totally fine as long as you're happy and content being that person. But when I was so exhausted trying to be that person, and I just like needed to give myself permission that I didn't have to be that person. So I worked through a lot of what I hated about being a parent, what I didn't like about motherhood when my kids were really little, especially my son, my first one. Because it was like, I don't want to rock him to sleep every night. That sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. Like I want to lay down by myself. Like it's okay that you want to lay down by yourself. You don't have to be the mom that like rocks her kid to bed every night and co-sleeps and makes her own baby food and breastfeeds till they're 5. Like you don't it's okay if you like formula feed and feed from the jar and put your baby in a crib in the first 2 weeks that they're born. Like all of that is also okay. And if you want to talk about like how much you hate it, that's also okay too. Because like we all do from time to time. And I found that to be a very big struggle for me to be like, this is really hard. Because every time I wanted to say it, I was met with like, well, this is motherhood. Welcome to motherhood. This is your life for the next 18 years. What did I do wrong? I've made the wrong decision. Can I go back?
And this isn't at all what the vision or the thing that I was like led to believe it was going to be.
I thought like it was just going to be magical, right? Like the baby would come out, my maternal instincts would come in. I have boobs, so I would breastfeed and I would just know what to do. And people told me that I wasn't going to sleep, but I had partied all night many times. So
If
like that was going to be fine because I've done it. I've stayed up many, many times. So all that was going to work out. And now I'm like, oh, it's just so different. It's just so different. And so that's why I love having these conversations because I think it's just so great to normalize the fact that like it's okay if you don't want to be a mom today. It's okay if you don't like being a mom today. You know, obviously also mental health concerns are a factor, and I am here to support anyone who is struggling immensely and, wanting to run away. But I mean, I'm also talking about like, is there days when I woke up and I was like, I really don't want to do this today? Of course. And so like I'm trying to create a space where like we can just talk about that because it's fine. Because we all feel the same way. And then also, if you are someone that wants to run away regularly and it's more of like a mental health concern, then like let's talk about it.
let's talk
Let's
about it.
talk about it.
Like, let's be real about that because it's really important to all of that stuff matters, right? Like it's
It
important
does.
to name it. It's important to breathe it. It's important to give it life. Right before we hit record, I was telling Amanda that I was presenting at a group yesterday, and it was a childbirth prep class, and we were talking about mental health and all these things, and I could just see this look in their eyes of like deer in the headlights and like, oh my God, like, and I was still trying to be very like inclusive and like like not, I want to use the word like trauma informed, around like I don't know what these people's lived experiences are, I don't know what I could be activating within them. um but also like we got to a closing, and the deer in the headlights, they kind of softened, and we really talked about some of the really horrible things that can happen in postpartum. And I just said, like, your mental health is the most important thing right now. Like, if
Mhm.
you are fixated on something, if you are stuck on something like the right sleep sack or the right stroller or the safety ratings on the car seats, all of that stuff is secondary to your mental health.
Mhm.
Because if you are having thoughts that I want to run away or I want to escape, that's actually what depression and anxiety sounds like. Never say, I'm depressed or I'm anxious, especially outside of maybe our like romantic partnerships or our best friend, right? Like that's really the only time that we might say that phrase, or in our therapy room. But I was just saying to these women, and I could just get the impression that nobody had been talking about mental health yet with them. No one should have to struggle like that and think that they're failing or think that they're the problem at any stage of parenting,
Mhm.
because they're not. Like, they're not, you are not the problem. The problem
No,
is the problem. Like, you are not the problem. Your partner is not the problem. Your baby is not the problem. The problem is the problem.
exactly. And I think that's where there's always been this like um I used to call it like a twisted part of me, like when I was younger. I really wanted to like go into psychology, but like I wanted to like get into like the depth of people's brains and like the darkness of people's brains. I just
Yes.
found it all so fascinating. I want to create a space for those moms who are in that deep, dark space because I now realize like when we don't give them an opportunity to talk about it, because it is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're like you just experienced in this group, you could get the sense that no one was talking about it, probably because you could feel that uncomfortable, awkward. It's like this tension, right? Like, of course, nobody wants to talk about suicide, and we don't want to talk about hurting ourselves or our children. And we don't want to talk about, a mom like running away and abandoning her kids. All of those things are fucking horrible.
Yes.
But they happen, and they generally happen because we don't give that mom a space to share what she's feeling. I had this mom on my podcast once. I found her on TikTok. To be honest, her TikTok just like made my jaw hit the floor. And she was just sharing how she struggled with postpartum psychosis and the things that her thoughts were telling her to do. And she blew my mind because she was so open. Like, this is what they told me to do. This is what I wanted to do. This was my plan. And I finally got help because I realized how dark and scary those thoughts were. And I was like, I love you. I love you. Like, we need to talk about these things because this is happening. She ended up having like some sort of thyroid condition that was like accompanying all of the other stuff. But the thyroid condition was a major player in her postpartum depression and psychosis. So, like, that's why, like, we have
Right.
to talk about this because if she didn't talk about it, then other moms might not know that they need to have their thyroid levels checked. For her, she also explained it to me that, like, she wants moms to understand that, like, physically, there could be something going on inside your body. It doesn't
Basically.
have to do with just you're a bad mom that wants to hurt her kids.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's never been it. But, like,
Or like,
that's what we
some
feel.
some of the things that some of my clients have said to me are like, why did this happen to me? Right? Like, why not somebody else? Why did depression or anxiety or OCD choose me? Why was I the one who am the only person who had a traumatic stress response to this kind of birth when I've heard other people not have that same response?
Hmm.
It's not so personal sometimes. Like
No, it's
there
not
is,
black and white.
yeah.
Well, and even like I would challenge that thought of like, why me? I now kind of think it's all of us. Just some of us hide it better, right? Not everybody has a diagnosis, but you can't tell me there is not one mother listening right now who hasn't experienced like an I hate this day. I hate this. This is exhausting. I wish I never did this. Like, what have I done to my life? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I've realized that more and more and more is the moms who don't want to be open and talk about it are probably the ones that are struggling the most. I think it's all of us. Just again, you're the only one, you feel like you're the only one sitting in that therapist chair getting support on it. And you're actually so much better off because you know it's you. But it is hard. It's hard to see that when you're in it. It feels very like, I am the worst mother in the world. And my kids deserve better and all of the things. And none of that is true.
What is the like the mantra or the affirmation or like the phrase that you say to yourself or said to yourself when you were really working on this like permission giving to like take care of yourself?
Sounds really silly, but I used to just repeatedly tell myself that I'm a good mom.
Mm,
Now I can tell you with full confidence, I'm a good mom. Like, I do not doubt that in any way, shape, or form. Even on the days when I rip my kids' heads off,
mhm.
even on the days that I've stuck them in front of a screen all day, even on the days when I'm like, I could have done more. Yeah, okay, of course we could have, but we all freaking could have. Like, and that day just didn't, it just wasn't as great as tomorrow will be. But tomorrow will be better. But there's something that now I've told myself that so much that I true like I know it. I believe it. I do because that was always my biggest thing. I was trying to. So I struggled with postpartum rage and I did a lot of yelling, a lot of door slamming, a lot of yelling. And I kept thinking like I'm totally screwing this whole thing up. Like so the consistency of like telling myself that I'm a good mom and that was really supportive to me. And so I think like the power of that is huge. I should probably change it into other things in my life now because, there's certain things everybody's confident about or not so confident about. But one thing I know 100%, and like someone could tell me tomorrow, I don't really think you're a great mom. I'd be like, good for you. That's fine. Because I know I am.
Yeah.
Like in my soul of all souls, I know that's something I'm very confident about is I'm a damn good mother and I show up every single day. And some days I'm better than others, but that's okay. My mom was better than others some days too, and I think she's a kick-ass mom.
It changes the narrative of whatever the story is that a person might be telling themselves. And affirmation work is it's proven. There's like research based things about telling yourself positive things, and it's not like toxic positivity or like reframing your thoughts if you've had a negative experience with like CBT or something. It's like affirmation work is different in the sense that like you are wanting to believe something and and you actively are participating in the therapy or the mental health or the whatever the things are that come with the affirmation, um, that when you repeat that affirmation to yourself, you say it as many times and you actually do start to believe it. It's like when we start to believe all the negative shit that we say to ourselves all the time. Nobody questions how that negative shit got there, right? But somehow I think when I've done affirmation work with people, especially in groups, they're like, well, does it really work? But like, really, does it really work? And it's like, well, you seem to believe all the negative stuff. So like, could we try? Like, could we try the positive stuff? And doing the work doesn't have to look like actual therapy in a therapy room. It just means like you said, dealing with your shit. Circling back to that first statement you said, like, to give yourself permission to do any of this stuff, to land on a positive affirmation, to start believing it, you have to deal with your shit first, whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
We could do a whole nother podcast on what the work looks like, but it's like,
for sure. And
yeah,
I think that's what I was gonna say to you was like, I think it's like you really start to believe it when you start to see that you're actually doing the things.
yes,
But you got to work on the things
yeah.
to start to see yourself do the things, if that makes sense.
Anything else you have the urge to share with our listeners today?
My only other thing I would love, because it's something that seems to come up a lot or I needed a lot of, is just the reminder of you're not alone.
Hmm.
And I find like in the motherhood space, particularly, it can be so incredibly difficult because it feels very alone. Like, I don't know, I've had like anxiety and depression episodes other times in my life, but that, like, nobody understands what I'm going through was so heavy in like that time of my life. When, I mean, this doesn't mean that you have to do this, but when I started talking about my postpartum depression experience online, and the flood of comments and DMs and just like whatever. And then starting the podcast and just the reviews that I've received or messages, you're just like, this is like an epidemic. We all feel like we are failing 24/7. So I would encourage you to just start having the conversation, even if it's just like at a mommy and me group. Be like, this is really hard, right? Like, is anybody else struggling with how hard this is? And they're all going to thank you for opening that conversation because they're all struggling too, in one way, shape, or form. Maybe some are struggling more than others, but even the moms who look like they're so good at it and you've like labeled them as like the best mom ever, like they need that space.
And I think something really important to add on to that is that you don't have to start every sentence with "I love my baby," but or "I love
Um,
my partner."
yes, you don't. You
You
don't.
don't.
We get it.
We get it.
We get
You're
it. If
here,
you
you're at mommy and baby group, or you're at therapy, or you're out with friends. Like, we know this. We know that you love your
we
baby.
know this. Yeah.
And you know what? If you don't love your baby, if you are in that space, because I have lived that experience of, so it's even when you don't feel like you love your baby or your toddler or your school ager who just told you they hated you for the first time, like, you still do. There is
Mhm.
still a part of you, even if you can't see it, even if it's invisible, even if it only comes around once a week, there is still a part of you that does, and you don't have to start every sentence with it.
Yeah, I love the two things can be true. That's kind of been my biggest takeaway is motherhood is gray and we all go into it trying to be black or white, and you can be neither. You can never be either of them. You will never be a good mom every day. You'll never have it figured out. Your kid will never sleep sometimes. Like, it's you will never be one or the other. You will never be a good mom or a bad mom. You're always just kind of like a decent one who sits in the middle. None of us actually know where the middle gray area is. And it's messy and it's ugly and it's beautiful and it's all the things. But no one can tell you how to get there. But once you figure out when you're there, you're like, oh,
Oh,
I'm
this
just going
is
to be the
it.
world's okayest mom.
Yes.
Right?
I'm
Yeah.
like the
And
best at this. Like,
yes. So
um,
I'm always just trying to find the beauty in the gray, because that's just where all the answers are. Because every kid is different, every situation is different. There is no black or white answer, is kind of what I've figured out.
Yes.
So
Yes.
no one's actually doing it right or wrong. That's also what I figured out, right? We're all just doing like a decent, mediocre job. As long as they're alive, well, and fed, then we're winning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We are all winning at the end of the day. And
Yep.
whatever healthy, happy, and fed looks like for you is also in the gray. It's
Yeah.
also in the gray. Awesome. Oh my goodness. It was so great to actually record this with you and
Me
have
too.
you
I'm really
here.
excited.
It
I
was,
know this was wonderful. We could have like six more.
we actually could like, and actually, I think we already named six more, even in the
I
recording of
know.
this one.
I know.
There's textbooks, there's actual books, there's many different takes on how all of this works and lands and skills and resources and tools. And so I never claim to think that we're going to solve the problem in one episode, but a series of episodes or a series of resources you can learn to practice being in
Mhm.
the gray and being the world's most good enough mother.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. It was great having you.